Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mama Jack podcast. Today we have a special guest from the land down under. She's from Australia, and her name is Prudence, and we're just going to jump right into her story.
Hi,
Mhm.
Prudence. How are you?
I'm really well, Jackie. How are you?
How is it on the other side of the world right now?
It is beautiful, as per usual. I live in a really beautiful part of Queensland on the Sunshine Coast, and we are coming out of summer into autumn, apparently. We're having a late summer,
Hmm.
so I don't think we've got the full autumn memo yet. Waiting for the cooler days, but it's very humid and beautiful. It's 6 a.m. here in the morning.
Oh,
So lots
geez.
lots are still sleeping, but I'm up with the
Yes.
puppy.
And it is 4 p.m. where I'm recording. So this is incredible that we get to do this together from the opposite ends of the world, literally.
It's
So
super
cool.
cool. Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Prudence Todd, and I am a wifey to one man. We've been together for 25 years and a mama to four children who are now, two of them are adults. We have a daughter and three sons. So our daughter is 20, and then our three sons are 18, 14, and 12. And yeah, I'm really enjoying at the moment that phase of life for me where the boys are really going into that portal of teenagehood. So I am really throwing myself into my baby, my next baby, which is my work. And yeah, so I'm a holistic pelvic care practitioner and help women to heal after birth in their bodies, whether
Beautiful.
that's, all the unspoken things that women don't talk about are the things that
Hmm.
I help them heal. So it's very beautiful work, and I feel very privileged. And so much of my own journey is poured into that when I'm working with women. So I feel really grateful that that's coincided, or perhaps I've chosen that now that my sons are so in there. When my sons were growing into their teenage years, it's just so awesome to be able to work with my work with women, and
Hmm.
I just it's such a gift to be able to do that. So I just also was saying that, I am so grateful for the opportunity to share my story. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
reaching out to me and being able to share.
of course. We can't wait to hear it. So how did your journey start off? I mean, 20 years ago. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a long time.
It is. And you know what? You're on the other side of because I got two toddlers. So I'm like,
Yeah.
the parent that's like, they're like, enjoy every moment, you're gonna miss it. But in the moment you feel crazy. But I'm
Yeah.
also in the part where it's like I'm remembering like, waking up all night with a newborn is hell, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm to the point where I'm like, those moments were so precious at the same time,
Mm,
you know?
totally. Yeah.
And so, and I have a feeling like as they grow and go through different stages, this is kind of what happens. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
waiting and waiting. It's the mom
Mm-hmm.
thing. But go ahead, start off with your story.
Yeah, look, you're exactly right. Like it's all relative, right? It's all, wherever we're at is relative to where we're at. And, as I'm speaking, I really honor every woman, every dad in whatever phase they're in. And I think as I get older, I cherish more and more the different phases of life and the memories that I get in my body when I see and interact with women and men from all different phases. But my husband and we grew up catching the school bus together. I came to the area here from a couple of hours away when I was 15, and we caught the same school bus to different schools and um, became really good friends. And we had other girlfriends and boyfriends, and would just hang out as mates. And after a few years, I never expected to have a relationship that was anything more than he was such a good mate to me. I'd talk to him about all my crazy boyfriends that I was having troubles with. And after a few years, he went away to work at the snow and came back, and we caught up as we always do, and something changed. We kissed that night and something had changed. And I had been going through my life. I grew up as a Christian and I wanted to commit my life to that. And he was interested to know more about my life, and I shared it to him, and he decided that he was kind of ready to have a change. And so he decided that he wanted to give his life to that as well. And I'm not going to go into like a long part of that story, but it is the foundation of, what happened later in our life. And when we talk now about that time, he will say that he chose those things for himself. He didn't make those decisions because of me. Obviously, he met me and was looking for more. But for him, it was like this was going to bring something that he'd never experienced in his life. So we continued on together in our relationship, and we got married at 21. We had our first baby at 23, and I had become a midwife. We'd moved away, moved back to our kind of home area. And during that time, it was just, it's all about survival. It's about getting on with, creating your life and having a job, and these little people that start coming into your world. And all I ever wanted was to be a mum. Whenever we chatted about it, he was like, yeah, let's wait till 27. I was like, let's do it at 23. So we decided on 25, and we had babies at 23 anyway. And yeah, I was a midwife, and everyone was like, oh, this will be a breeze for you. And I wanted to have all my babies at home. So for me, it was a big journey for me to get myself out of my way to really just birth my babies as a woman, not as a midwife, because I had so much in my head, so much that I'd witnessed with women. And I just wanted it to be my own unique experience. And so we had our first baby at 23, and then we had a second baby 2 years later. And after the second baby, that was a very, very, very big experience for me. He was born at home, very big baby, over 10-pound, born posterior.
Oh my
and
God.
Yeah, it was, as far as the birth went, it went well considering, but it impacted my body a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I experienced depression for the first time. When looking back, I probably had little symptoms of depression starting, but that's when I really went into a really heavy oppression in my body after he was born, and very fatigued and very drained, and my adrenals just exhausted. And I guess that was where it started for my husband to really have to care for me in that, have to be able to look after the family, work with a woman who was really suffering in herself.
Mm-hmm.
And as a consequence of that, even though we've always been deeply in love, we fought hard. We've always fought hard. When we fight, it's big, and when we love, it's big. And we decided that I decided I needed a break from having kids. I wanted more kids, and I was going to take 4 years to regenerate my body because I was quite anemic, and I later found out that that was actually adding to my depression. So the anemia actually, as far as the doctors were concerned in mainstream medical, it was, at the lower end of the okay range. But as a doctor told me years later, 8 years of being at the lower end is so depleting in your system. And so I took 4 years to really regenerate my body, and we moved to Canada. We lived in Canada for 12 months during that time, and just absolutely, it was so refreshing to go over there and just have our own experience together and be with our 2 and 4-year-old over there and experience it, not just as traveling through the country, but just living in the country with those, all the cultures there and seasons. And it was just really a breath of fresh air for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back, and then we got pregnant with our third baby. So we had another 2 babies quite close together, 2 years apart. And I experienced depression again after the fourth. So it was kind of like the babies that I had close together, when my body didn't have that time to rebuild itself. was where I noticed that I got quite unwell,
Mm-hmm.
suffered a lot of mastitis, like ongoing, every couple of weeks. And it wasn't just a postnatal depression, it was an ongoing heaviness in my body. And I just remember day in, day out, like, I never knew when I would wake up and feel really heavy, feel like in my heart I was happy, like I'm kind of optimist, which also didn't do me any favors in being able to see where I really was at,
Mm-hmm.
because I was always like, it's a beautiful day. I have so much to be grateful for. I don't understand what's going on in my body, but I'm just so grateful. So I didn't realize that I was actually becoming more and more depressed and oppressed in my body. And after our fourth, things got really tough in the area where we live. And my husband was a builder, and we just decided that if we put our house in the market and it sold, we would shift to Western Australia, across the other side of the continent, because we knew people there, we knew that there was building, and we were up for an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we put the house on the market and it sold, and we actually made some money, which we weren't expecting. And we decided we'd do a 2-week trek across Australia, and we set up our life over there. And I decided to continue homeschooling the kids by this time. I had 2 little ones that were kind of in the lower end of the schooling years. And we lived in this tiny little house. It was really hot, really cold. It's just out in the wheat country, sheep country. The most beautiful part of living there was our friends, because there wasn't a whole heap to do there. We've still got really beautiful friends from that time, but that also was a time where I felt very isolated, and my depression became increasingly highlighted in our life. And I actually had a friend who came to me and brought to my attention what she was seeing. And I found it really, really hard to listen to her. And I chose to take on board what she was saying. And we decided that even though we were trying to make our life there for at least 5 years, we were building a house and we wanted to stay in that area, that I would come home and heal my depression. So I'd come home to the east coast of Australia with the children while my husband stayed over there and finished our home, which was going to be our home. So, yeah, he was over there for 7 months. He saw the kids 3 times in that time.
Oh my
It was a
goodness.
really hard time of life. And then basically after all that hard work, kissed those dreams goodbye and came home to here on the East Coast again. And I, during that time, I went to retreats. I did a 10-day retreat where, actually, no, sorry, that was the first time I went on antidepressants. And that really helped our relationship for probably 18 months. And then I got to the point where the kids were old enough and I felt like I was ready to move into something for myself. And during that time of raising children, I actually lost my registration for nursing and midwifery because I hadn't worked enough, and I'd been so heavy in my body that I just couldn't even, being a full-time mum was what I was committed to,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't go back. Like, that just wasn't an option for me with the state of my heart and mind at the time. And so consequently, I didn't do enough hours and I lost my registration. And then they were like, well, you can't get registered again unless you do your whole degree again. And I was like, that's not happening. I've got 4 children now. I'm not going back to university for 4 years, 5.5 years by the time I do all my hours. So I'm going to recreate myself. And I became a Pilates instructor purely because my body had suffered so much from having really big babies. I had big tummy separation. My back had bombed out on me a couple of times. And I was really enjoying Pilates. And someone said to me, oh, you'd be really good at teaching this. So I went off and did that. And just that little extra bit of commitment and stress in my life kind of tipped me over the edge. I remember, embracing it all along the way, and, sitting at the computer with little toddlers on my, and being engaged in the work and feeling alive in myself, that I was learning something new. But at the same time, my nervous system wasn't coping with it. And that was kind of the beginning of my relationship being really strained with my husband again. And, you know, he was always trying to support me in the best way that he knew how, but he didn't know how to deal with depression either. He was trying to learn on the spot every time,
Yeah.
you know, there was an explosion or a meltdown or sensitivity, you know, and quite often it would be, you know, he would come home from work and you're just in the throes of, you know, looking after children and getting dinner and all of the little survival things that you have to do. And then in the evening, we would get talking and we'd end up having an argument at like 9 or 9:30 at night. And that was a really awful way to go to bed. And, you know, we had some really heated, not physical as in punching, but, you know, pushing each other conversations and arguments. And it got to the point this particular day where he softened towards me in an argument, and I was just so angry in myself that he hadn't got where I was at in the first place, that I pushed him across the room, and our son saw it. And that, I just remember that being the breaking point for him. And he
Yeah.
was like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this to be seen by our children. I don't want the fighting anymore in their presence. And I'm going to go. And so he went for 2 weeks, in inverted commas. He went for a few days and then he was like, I think I need 2 weeks he went to his folks' place and stayed there. And then as the days went on, he was just like, I actually need space. I need space to deal with myself. And I was heartbroken. And with any person, I'm sure, who experiences anxiety or depression and they have these huge meltdowns and outbreaks in their body, things are coming out of your mouth before you even realize what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You've already hurt people. You want to take it back. There's the self-loathing. It's the guilt. It's the shame. It's the constantly ruminating over what was said in the conversation and how painful it is to see your partner hurting from something that you said. Also trying to like look at the situation and feel kind of validated in yourself that, you know, you're not feeling seen in the pain that you're in at that time. And maybe someone could have been more gracious and kind and more sensitive to what you're experiencing as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's all of this that's going on. And so I just remember feeling so heartbroken and then finding out that he didn't want to come back at this point, and he didn't know if he loved me. And we knew that this was big for our family, and we decided that we would go and seek counselling. And we actually both agreed on seeing the same person but not together. So we started counselling to heal ourselves as human beings, with no agenda of whether or not we would come back together. It was just really important for me to heal, and really important for him to be able to heal what was so traumatic for him, which was that, you know, he married a woman who he thought he knew and didn't understand when we came together how much trauma there was in my body, in my heart, in my mind. And that was unveiling itself as we had 4 children and the stresses of life started to build.
Mm-hmm.
And I was grappling with this in my body. So we counseled for 10 months. And during that time, we learnt how to hold ourselves in what we were experiencing. So I was just chatting to a woman yesterday about this. On the inside, I was so heartbroken and really in fetal position. And I remember my sister-in-law saying to me at the time, how are you not just curled up permanently? Like, to know that, you know, I don't know, what was it, maybe we've been together 17 years at that time, that he doesn't love you and potentially isn't coming back. Like, how is that impacting you? And I was like, well, I was really working through in myself the fact that I wanted to be together because we chose to love each other and we chose to be together. And no part of me wanted him to come back if he didn't want to be there. And so that left me with the choice of the situation or my health or my children, or finding a reason why to be angry and to be unwell, or to be like, you know what, he's a human being who I love, and I'm going to let him go and do whatever he needs to do to heal from living with me and experiencing everything we've experienced together. And I'm going to just heal myself, and I'm going to take care of myself and rebuild myself. And if and when the time comes that he returns, I will be so grateful. And if that doesn't happen, I will be fortified in myself to actually be responsible for what's happened in our life and take it from wherever that point is. And so it was just like a daily effort of, I learned tools during that time. A lot of these tools are actually used with women that I work with now. I used tools during that time that really helped me to be present to myself. I'm asking myself daily, you know, how are you? What do you need to be supported right now? How can I support you? And really checking in with myself constantly. And sometimes it was literally holding a pillow and crying, trying to do that outside of looking after children, and still showing up for work. And, you know, it's just, when I look back, it was such a beautiful, messy time of life, because I went places in myself that I would never have gone if he didn't choose to leave. And I totally understood why he did. I totally saw it. It didn't mean that it wasn't heartbreaking for both of us. So after a number of months, we decided that we would, I remember it was our wedding anniversary. It was really raw at the time. And every time we interacted kind of, you know, to exchange the kids, or, you know, we saw each other because he might have been picking something up at home, or I never knew what it was going to be like. You know, was he going to be open? Was he going to be really moving through something in himself that I just needed to hold myself and be respectful of what he was going through? And at our anniversary date, I remember reaching out to him and saying, look, would you like to meet up and in a park and just light a candle and honor how long we've been together, the experiences that we've been together in? And there's no agenda for me. It doesn't need to look like anything, but I just, you know, really am grateful for the time that we had together. And I don't know what's going to happen from here, but this is all we have up until this point, is what we've experienced together. So we met up and we talked a lot and ended up going for a walk on the beach. We ended up being actually really intimate with each other that night, and it was really beautiful and healing. And then it would go, you know, as we went on from there, there would still be times where it'd be really raw. There'd still be times where we couldn't even look at each other. It was just too much. There'd be times where he was processing stuff and still be like, I just don't know if I can come back and possibly be hurt again. And we started kind of dating again. And every time we came together, we would decide, do we want this to be a fun time? Do we want this to be where we sit down and have the hard conversations and just really hold ourselves and, you know, be really adult in our communication without dropping into all the emotion of the past, and just really talk about things that we need to talk about and get to know each other again? Or do we just want to go out and just go out for dinner and just, you know, have a good time? And so we would decide that and bring intention to every time we got together. And we do that with the kids sometimes. We do that with each other, and started to rebuild our relationship. And after 10 months, it went into the school holidays and he decided he would come home and start to kind of reintegrate back into living at home, but wasn't committed to staying. He was just testing the waters, basically. So, you know, after 2 years, he was kind of, there was this understanding in us that he was there to stay, and he felt free in himself to be like, you know, I'm here and I love you. And we rebuilt that foundation again. And since then, you know, that was, I think our eldest son was 10, so that would have been 8 years ago. And, you know, our kids have grown up through teenage years. So our oldest at that time would have been 12. She was going into high school. There was things happening in their life, which as they have got older, we've learnt and seen from their perspective how big that was for them and what was happening for them at that time that we were trying to heal ourselves. And during that time that we were separated, we sat with our children and we expressed to them that, you know, what they were experiencing was really important to us as well. And that we were separated because we loved each other and we loved ourselves and we loved them, and we wanted to be the best human beings we could possibly be for all of us. And we didn't know what that looked like. And so they held that uncertainty as well. And, you know, our 18-year-old, that impacted him in that when he was here, he felt like he really needed to step into a big person role, the dad role of the home when dad wasn't here. And that impacted him in ways that have played out in his life. Felt like it really took away that ability at 12, where you're kind of in that time of life for a young boy where you're not quite in the responsible phase of life. You're still in the adventure time of life, but you're not a little kid either.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting, and, you know, you're making friends and doing cool stuff, but not with all the responsibility of, you know, 17, 18.
Yeah.
And we've learned through these times that he really felt that was ripped off. Like he just lost those years. He just went straight into feeling really responsible for the emotions that went on the home, really responsible for, you know, being the house. And after my hubby came back, we were together for a little bit, and then he actually got a job working away. So he was away every week, coming home on the weekends for 10 months. And so that was another period of time where we were actually quite solid during that time, but we didn't realize how that was impacting our kids as well. Like our son was like, you know, dad's not here. The kids, you know, they'd already experienced as little people us fighting a lot. And so they'd learnt things, and they had been kind of undone in themselves in little ways that we didn't understand. And so as they've got older, there's been a lot of discussion and talk with them, and basically helping them heal. And as a mum, there's been a lot of guilt and shame for me in, you know, having experienced depression, having not dealt well with how I was trying to do my best with absolute exhaustion, breastfeeding, raising children, and that not looking very pretty some days, you know, that looking like screaming at my child out of complete frustration of whatever they were doing at the time, like over the top of them, where they're just kind of hovering in the corner, like terrible memories in my body, which didn't happen all the time. Like equally, I was, you know, an incredible mum that loved her children so fiercely and spent time with them and homeschooled them and did adventures with them. But there was just so much up and down in our family all the time that I really started to see the impact of that. And so I had to learn how to be gracious with myself, because I started to feel this cycle of heaviness coming back in again, and feeling really shameful in myself that I didn't get parenting right. I mean, we all go into parenting, right, with understanding what didn't work for us as kids.
Yeah.
And we want to be the best parents ever. But one thing my husband and I never really did was sit and talk about the type of parents we want to be. You know, we might have had that on the inside, but we didn't really talk about it. And in the last probably couple of years, we've really consolidated as a couple. And in some ways, we grieve how long it took, but in other ways, we celebrate that we're there and we are so solid for our kids, and we're a safe place for our kids. And we've always told them that, even though we were still working through the mess in ourselves. And, you know, 4 years ago, I lost my brother, and that was really, really huge for our family. He was in a relationship. He was separated from his partner at the time and had an 11-year-old daughter, and he died of a double drug overdose. And it was very sudden and very shocking for all of us. And the way that that unfolded for my family was really, really hard. And my husband was the one that got the call from my brother's partner, and it was really big. My husband went and told every one of my family, and our 18-year-old was watching that as it happened. And he wasn't 18 at the time. He was, so what was that, 18, 14. the way that that impacted our family was big again. And I experienced anxiety like I'd never experienced anxiety up until that point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried really hard, knowing all the things that I knew about depression. I tried really hard to take care of myself. And my husband was so gracious in, holding space for me to grieve, whilst, our whole family trying to grieve, because everyone loved him so dearly. And I eventually got to the point where I was walking every day. I was trying to fix my diet, like get everything in place, do all the things that people tell you to do,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can be better in yourself and not experience this chewing away inside your body that, I'd already been through the grief, the pain in the back of my shoulders, the pain shifting all over my body. It was guiding my work. So I started like grief body movement classes, and it was starting to help me to see how I connected to people who had experienced grief in their life as well. But I was also still struggling with this in myself, this terrible gnawing away in myself of this anxiety. And I started seeking out different things. Like I'd started meditating for long periods of time to kind of heal things in my life. And one of the things that I needed to heal was the foundation of spiritual beliefs for me, because my brother had died and gone where I didn't know. And so I was also integrating all of this foundational stuff in my life. It was like, where is he? What has happened? Where is his body gone? Where is his spirit? Where is his soul?
Mm-hmm.
And it started making me question what I'd taught my children. I started to see that my really strict spiritual beliefs for my children were also holding them captive, and that had happened for me as well. Like there wasn't a freedom to explore myself as a human in what I had been taught. And I say this with the deepest love to my parents who raised me, feeling that they were teaching me the best that they knew as well. But so much of the Christian beliefs that I was taught held me captive in myself. And so when my brother died, it started to open that up. And I started to realize that even the way that my husband, the tumult in our home life, in our family that we were experiencing, was coming from these underlying unhappiness places in myself as a woman, as a person, as a young girl who'd never grown up, because I didn't really even know what I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And during the time my husband and I were separated, he actually chose to step away from the fellowship of the Christian. We basically met in homes together and had fellowship. And then we went through COVID, and there was no ability to meet together during that time. No one
Yeah.
met together. And I was really kind of being still in meditation. That's how I was working with my anxiety of losing my brother and trying to ease this angst that was inside of myself. During that time, I really unpacked a whole heap, and I moved away from the fellowship myself. And so many things started to heal in my family. And, I say this with total acknowledgement. This is my experience, and I'm not in any way, I don't have anything against any belief system. This is my experience of what happened in my body, and the oppression started to lift. And I also, during that time, with my anxiety, woke up one day and I was just like, I don't know how to live another day. And through the guidance and help of a friend, my husband actually took me to the hospital, and I went on medication. That was the second time I'd been on medication. I'd been on it earlier when I had depression, and we'd moved back from Western Australia. I'd been on medication, and then I went on medication again specifically for the anxiety. And after about 3 months, I actually felt like a normal person.
Yeah.
I was terrified to go on the medication. I'm a very, like, I so believe in healing from the deepest part of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed to also give myself a break. I was walking every day. I was trying to like pull everything out of my diet that, could have been adding to my digestion, that was adding to my brain, all the pieces that, we're told. And again, there's nothing against all the pieces that we're told, but for me, in my situation, I was like, I have a husband that I've been with this man for 21 years, and I don't want to lose that. And I have children that I want to raise and love. And I knew, my daughter by this time was coming to me and saying, I need you to decide, Mum, either can you be with Dad peacefully or stop fighting, like one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that it was impacting my children, and I knew that the sensitivity was so there in my life, and I just needed a break. And so I went on the medication, and it was actually the first time in my life I had access to just being able to be with myself without trying to fix myself. Like, I just felt a sense of relief, and I actually stopped walking and I started listening to my body every day instead of just getting up as a coping mechanism. Every day, just being like, you have no choice. This is something that you need to do to actually feel well in your body. I would sit with my body and go, do I want to move? Do I want to be still? What do you want to eat today? What do you feel like eating today? Like, what is it that you need today? And for a long period of time, I actually realized that my body was so exhausted. I just needed to rest. So I rested for months. Did it like I'd walk when I felt like walking. And the second my body was like, that's enough, it could be 10 minutes down the road, I'd turn around and I'd come home. And I really, in the last probably 18 months, have consolidated a deep well of joy in my life. And my husband actually 3 years ago decided that he couldn't face building anymore. It was just, we'd been through COVID and we're going through all of that. And he was like, no, sorry, it was before COVID. It was just getting really stressful for him. He's like, I need a change. And he looked to getting a job in the mines and got a job up in the mines, which is 8 hours away from here. And so I faced him being away for 1 week and home for a week. And that was also a time of anxiety for me. And people were kind of like, do you think that Toddy going away is actually, impacting your health? And he got really clear with me and he said, I need you to know that I am not holding any responsibility for what happens with your health. I need to do this work. It was like a breath of fresh air for him. For like, after working as a builder for 25 years, he was just like, I need something new. And he started to change in his disposition, so much happier in himself. He got a break from that hard physical work that he was doing every day. And I got really responsible with the fact that I needed to step into my strength and let him go and enjoy when he came back. And how were we going to do that so that I could become exhausted? And so we actually decided, we've been through all different sorts of things. We had decided, like at the beginning, when we find it really hard when he would come home, and just integrating back into life together again, he said, why don't you go away for the first 24 hours? I'll settle in, you take a break, and then we'll come back together.
Yeah, because it's
So,
rough. I mean, my husband, he's gone a lot too. So I totally get like the traveling, and like it's hard. They're doing it for the family, right?
yeah,
They are, but it's really hard sometimes not to be mad about it. Like, it's
yeah,
seriously like, and then you're like, what am I doing? Like, they're literally feeding us. My
yeah.
husband, I'm a stay-at-home mom. He feeds us. He pays our rent. This is what he has to do. And when I married him, I knew what it was going to be like because I used to be in kind of his line of work too. So I knew the
Mm-hmm.
hours he would have to be putting in. I knew all that. But when you become a mother, it's like night and day because you don't know what
Mm,
the heck's going to happen to you. I have a few
mm.
questions for you. So, a couple questions for you.
Sure.
That first time that you went back after you guys had moved west, how were
Mm-hmm.
you feeling in your head? Because what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, and
Mm,
this is how I would have felt. So we're two completely different people, right?
mm-hmm.
But I would have been, if my husband got like upset that I was depressed, anxious, I would have felt almost abandoned a little bit. Did those thoughts ever go through your mind? Is that part
Mm,
of the fighting that maybe would happen or something like that? Because I know it was very hard for my husband to understand depression until he recently had his own bout of depression. And then he was
mm,
like, my God, this is what you were going through. Like he could not understand it. Like he couldn't understand. He thought I was just being lazy and complaining. And, he tried, quote, tried, but I didn't think his trying was ever enough.
mm. Yeah, I totally get that. And
Mhm.
the abandonment is real. And I think, feeling so alone.
Mhm.
And also that, I've had to really manage in myself the feeling of this is all my fault. And it's a really big thing. I mean, I know that when my husband said, you go home to get well, it was out of the deepest love for
Mhm.
me. And I know that every time even now we have a conversation, I'm really aware in myself that I I can be self-blaming
Yeah.
because of the whole situation. Time I feel like even through everything that we've been through, he just there's no way for him to understand how isolating it is when someone is like telling you what they're experiencing, but they're not able to experience it. So he's experiencing it from his point of view, but he can't possibly experience it. It's like you say, until someone has actually been through it, and he has not ever experienced depression. So it is really challenging for him to step into any kind of empathy for that. He is innately a happy, he feels stress and he feels all of those things, but he just, gets up, finds the best in the day. That's how he is. And so I have also done a lot of work in myself at understanding his capacity to get my world. And
Mhm.
even though empathy is where we walk in somebody else's shoes, or, I want you to get on my page, like come over here and actually sit where I am for a little while, he actually only has the capacity to be what he is based on his own experience of life. And one thing that really helped me through a lot of pain and angst, because there was a lot of time there where he would go away to the mines, and I would, I was getting the pushback from the boys of what they had experienced with us. And, dad wasn't there now. So they were going to step into the dad role and coming into teenage years and all the struggles that come with that. And they were going to, like, you know, have their say over me and push my authority around a little bit. And then,
Mhm.
my husband would come home and he'd be like, well, I'm not here. It's really hard for me to kind of back you in what I'm not seeing. And I just felt so hopeless in that situation. I was just like, if you don't have my back, who does? Like, if I
Yeah.
can't rely on you to like have my back. And so we've worked through that, and we've got understandings now of when he comes home, and how we work through that and what that looks like, in the kids really knowing that, when he's away, things will be dealt with when he comes back. Like, we've figured that out.
Mhm.
But one thing I really learnt during my time of healing is that humans only are capable of doing what they know. So if they knew any better, they'd be doing it. And this may not be a belief that anybody else wants to take on. But for me, in even looking at my child, when they're responding to me and it's just so freaking frustrating, and I'm just like out of my brain, lost all creativity. I don't know what else to do. I have no more grace left. And I just am like feeling trapped in myself, just taking a breath and being like, I know if you knew how to be any other way, you would be doing it. And that would just soften my heart. And I
Mhm.
would understand that, it's my responsibility to just be loving to you right now. Because if you could actually see me in all my entirety, like I am so desperately desiring, you'd be doing it.
Mhm.
You know, there is something in you, in your life experience, that's holding you back from seeing me. that's not giving you the capacity to hold me, that's not enabling you to show up for me like I need you to. So how can I find that elsewhere? What can I do to support myself? And it took the pressure off my husband. It took the pressure off my kids. It changed the way that I parented them and helped me to take the pressure off myself and allow more creativity to come in, because I would give myself time, because we want things to be fixed now, right? I mean, that's why we get into fights and arguments. That's why things get heated really fast, because the frustration is building there. We want it to all be resolved. And that's what would cause our arguments a lot, is that I'd be like a dog on a bone, I'd just be like, I am not going to bed until this is the way that I want to see it, and that I know that you have seen it and that you've sorted it for us in the way that I want it. And I didn't want it any other way than what I wanted it. And, it would push him into a place of total angst and fire up, and I wouldn't be able to just walk away. And so in the last few years, I have got better at that. I've got better at being able to be like, you know what, clearly they're not seeing it how I see it. And I'm going to go away and I'm going to nurture myself in the way that I see it, and look at what do I need. And when they have the capacity, which could be in 15 minutes, it could be in an hour, it could be tomorrow, they will come together again then. So that's whether it's with my teenagers or with my husband, or, in whatever situation. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I have to say, you're a very strong person for feeling all the way you're feeling and thinking about it the way you do, because I just look at it and put myself in those shoes, and you're very, very, very understanding. You're a very understanding person. And some of the stuff you said right now about, they don't have the capacity for that, I've put into my life in certain ways. But oddly enough, my husband, I haven't. And it's not like we
Mm,
have a bad relationship, but couples go through their things.
mm-hmm,
And I'm the hardest on him, I think. So even
mm,
me listening to that now, I'm like, dang, that's a very new way for me to think about things. And that
mm,
opened my eyes up to a lot of stuff. I
mm,
also wanted to touch on you taking the anxiety medication, because I don't know if you listened to any of my podcasts yet, but I went through my postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. I could list you off a billion things that I've been diagnosed with. Okay. And I
mm,
went for years trying to make it better myself, all the ways you have, physically, like working out, meditating, everything. And sometimes people need to realize that medication can be your tool to get you to being able to use those other tools. It
mm.
is like
Totally.
kind of like it takes everything, because you're like stressed and you're depressed and all of this stuff starts stacking up, and it kind of makes that start sinking and getting lower and lower and lower, so you can be more clear minded to see situations in other ways, to be able to meditate with a clear mind. Because I don't know about you, when I would meditate, and I'm on medication now too. I'm on it for depression and anxiety because I had a mental breakdown last November, like
Mm-hmm,
literally almost
mm-hmm,
put into an institution. So after I started taking it and finally gave up, because I was, pumping at the time for my daughter, this meant I couldn't pump anymore. This meant blah, 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 blah.
mm,
I literally was like, the only gripe I had was, why the hell did I not do this years ago? And then
mm,
I had the guilt. What did I do to my children? Like, they're still young, but they had
mm,
like the depressed, anxious, quick to scream, especially my son. My daughter's still really young. My son's 3.5, so he's still really young. But like, he didn't get the best side of me. And that kills me with guilt all the time. And
mm.
when I finally gave in, it opened doors to so many other things
Yeah,
spiritually. I mean, it's just insane.
yeah.
And as far as the spiritual thing, I totally understand. Me personally, I think all religion is beautiful, but I am a universe person, if you can understand that. I
Mm-hmm.
think the universe is the biggest part of everything, right? And God, let's call it God, let's call it whatever you want to call it. There is a higher something that can maybe, help us, spirit guides. I know you said when your brother passed away, you were having trouble with it. You just couldn't say, like, where is he? Like, in Christianity, what would that say? Like, is that a
Mm,
heaven and hell situation? Like, I grew up Catholic, so I'm not sure what that is in Christianity and,
mm,
the
mm,
ways you die. But like, with what I've been opening myself up to now is that it's all energy and we are all made of energy. And that energy, it's scientifically proven that that energy, when you die, goes somewhere. So when you're hearing like mediums and stuff like that, some of it's BS, right? Some of it's very generic and BS. But when they say they can pick up on energy, me personally, I've felt that myself. So I always tell people when people have passed, they are all around you. They are in you. Like, their energy, if they were ever had anything, an effect on you, they live within you. They can
mm,
hear you. Like, their energy is still alive somewhere. It doesn't
mm,
just go
mm,
into thin air. It doesn't just stop. The energy lives on. And yes, so long story short, starting the anxiety medication really opened my eyes up to a lot of stuff as well. And I
mm,
I agree with you. I have nothing against people that are super religious. Unless it's hurting other people, I don't love that aspect of it. But it changed I kind of found myself after treating myself with that aspect, and it opened my mind up to a lot of different ways of healing, and it made my tools that I had even easier to use. And like I said, you are very strong for what you've been through and what you, for lack of a better term, have dealt with. Because like I said, I have a husband that works away a lot too. And I mean, I can't imagine like the abandonment you must have felt in your heart and what you must have been going through. And I'm not saying any of this to talk bad about your husband at all, because like you said, he can't connect with things he doesn't know, right?
mm,
Same with my husband. Like, we've had this conversation before, me and my husband. I mean, we were at each other's throats, ready to leave each other when was deep in my last postpartum depression. So it was like, I totally get all of those emotions. I mean, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. I am a newbie, you know what I mean?
mm,
But it's very inspirational to see how you think in those
mm,
situations and how you grew from those situations instead of wallowing in self pity, saying, I am alone with my kids. I am so overwhelmed. I am feeling abandoned. I'm doing this. You decided to work on yourself and make yourself stronger. And that is incredible, because I'm telling you, a very small percentage of people would have been able to do that same thing without having a total intervention from somewhere else.
Well, thank you so much for acknowledging that. I love what you said about the energy and spirituality. And, you know, there's two things that I would really love to share about that. And the first is, I think the biggest realization for me was that, having grown up as a Christian and wanting to raise my children in a way that felt loving and safe for them, and then realizing that that was actually causing, like, those beliefs were causing a lot of my sadness inside of me, was that I felt like I needed to know the answers so that I could teach my children. And when my brother died and I would sit in meditation and I would bring all my questions and just sit and be still. And I got to the point where I just realized I don't need to know. And I'm okay with not knowing. And the conversations that I have with my kids now are just beautiful. And, they ask questions and I'm free to go, well, I don't necessarily know the answer to that. What do you think? And we have these amazing conversations about life and about afterlife. And we were extremely blessed that after my brother died, the decision was made to bring his body home to my parents, and we prepared his body. And the whole family was a part of that process. And so I just feel so blessed to be able to have this experience that's opened up our eyes to, like you say, like I feel too that, you know, for me, there's a God that's within me and I am within him. It's like we're all in each other as well. It's like how I treat myself is how I'm loved by him and how I treat others. And so to be loving comes to myself first. And I think a lot of people struggle with that whole loving yourself, particularly if they are from a spiritual Christianity background. It's like loving yourself first isn't the way. But for me, it's like that's, you know, if God's within me and I'm not loving myself, how do I know how to love other people? And yeah, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to say was, you know, in regards to being a mama and going through these experiences where we look back and we're just like, oh, you know, I feel guilt and shame around that. One of the things that I have learnt to through the years of growing my tribe is that trusting that I have power to hold them as their mother, irrespective of what we have been through. This is now their journey, and they called me to be their mum in some way or shape or form. If I am just with what is and don't go into the past and I don't go into the future, every step along the way, things happened because they happened for whatever reason. And I don't even need to know the reason. You know, that helped me to stop questioning why my brother died. It helped me to stop wondering why he didn't live a longer life and why he wouldn't be here for that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just being with what is. And when I look at my children now, I can be like, yes, I am walking the impact of my mothering to them in the early days. And I'm going to be gracious and loving to her so that I can love them now, because this is their journey
Yeah.
now. And it was the best that I could give. And every time, you know, I think about where it speaks about forgiveness in the Bible, you know, happening over and over again, you know, I think about that for myself. Like every time that guilt shows up, you know, and it does, you know, my hubby and I will be going through a really great time together, feeling really solid, and then something will happen with the kids and it will trigger something from the past, because we'll see how the past is impacting our child now and what they're struggling with. And it's like you can see us both just holding that pain in ourselves and just being really gracious to it and kind to it. And one of the things that I just love to share with myself is the words, I'm here and I care, like really just bringing ourselves back into our body and being still in ourselves and acknowledging what is right now, and that
Yeah.
you've done your best up until this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your story. Like I said, it was truly inspiring. And the way that you just thought about everything was so different than I think a lot of other people would have. And I think it's beautiful. And, you know, the whole story with you and your husband and not giving up on it again is beautiful. And thank you so much for being here and doing this with me across the stinking world. My God.
It's very special and such a gift to be able to connect like this. It's like this is where these tools come in. You know, we fight these tools with our kids all the time, but it's where the
Yes,
tools actually are just such a gift.
they
And thank you
are.
so much for the opportunity to share. It's a real, it feels like such a gift to me to be able to share our story. So thank you.
Yes, yes. I'm so, so happy that I was able to do that for you.
Well, okay, everybody. You heard it. That was a lot, right? That was a lot to take in. But I love the way that she was looking at everything because, as I said earlier, I don't think I would have been able to be so patient. So I really applaud her for that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. please follow me on Instagram, TikTok. I have a Facebook page and a group. Please review and rate me. I would love that. If you have any suggestions, as always, you can message me on any of those platforms, and I am more than open to hearing your suggestions, as well as if you have a story to tell. Thank you so much for listening.